Welcome to the Morning Coffee with Alan podcast, the less is more approach to personal development. Jonah Robins.
My brother, we're back.
So right before I hit the record button, you said, "What the fuck are we talking about?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's find out." So, one of the things that I really enjoy about our friendship is, having having our chats, just meeting for coffee every, maybe a couple times a month, and just hanging out and just shooting the shit, but really speaking to what we've seen, in our own lives and in our clients' lives. And I know you still work with people here and there. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but what's cool is we met probably 2012, 2011,
9 years ago.
9 years ago. First of all, just saying that was 9 years ago is crazy. 2012 is that's nuts. Anyway. But yeah, so one thing I know for sure is, we were both very much into, and still are obviously, into what it means to, to experience psychological well-being. And so I guess, yeah, we'll just have a conversation about that. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know that we need to talk about our journeys. I don't know that we need to talk about anything, but let's just start with that. Like, what does psychological well-being look like to you?
I think there's maybe stages to it, but I think it's the ability to, at some level, at least initially, change how you think and change how you feel, right? Because a lot of us, I think pretty much everyone that's their heart's beating and they wake up every morning has narratives or stories that run, or an identification to memories in their life. And it's like, well, this happened back there and this is me and this defines me and it potentially limits me in certain areas, or it causes depression or anxiety, or it manifests as a lot of different things. It can be, PTSD, for example. And I think well-being initially is going, oh, okay, I have skills and tools to change how I think and change how I feel. And that's life-changing, right? And that's kind of how we met, right? We were, in the beginning, we were in the tapping realm and neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, fast shift T, kind of all of that. And it's revolutionary because for me, I just would feel anxious a lot of the time or bad. And I'd have the running dialogue of condemning judgmental thoughts that kind of all the time would be running. And I learned, how to do the tapping, and it was like, whoa, I don't have to feel that. Like that breakup from 4 years ago is still haunting me. And it's like, wait, I don't have those bad feelings anymore. Right. And then obviously as the journey progresses, I think it is working out enough of the stuff where you're not constantly being triggered. It's like we're creating a new baseline where we can feel good a lot of the time and we're not being as triggered a lot of the time. But there's a more grounded element to it where you can feel a spectrum of emotion and you're not generally caught in any of it for too long. There's times earlier today I was angry. I felt angry. It didn't last for hours and hours and days and weeks, and I didn't spiral into this thing, but it was an emotion that was able to be felt and expressed, and I was able to kind of come back to balance. So in the beginning, it's kind of working through enough of the stuff where you get a grounded foundation of I'm okay and I'm safe. And then from that platform, you're able to feel really good. You're able to feel not so good, and you're kind of okay to feel all of it. So
yeah, you and I talk a lot about sort of meeting people where they're at, right? And I think you and I were both at a point where, well, let's face it, I think the majority of people who are experiencing, maybe a bout of, I mean, so many people are going through a lot of trauma now with anxiety, and I say trauma, I mean that term is relative, I think, to the experiencer, right? But for sure, when I found fast EFT, as you said, I was coming from a place of, okay, there's this thing called neurolinguistic programming. There's this idea that you can change sort of your self-image or change your unconscious programming, right? And that really kind of turned me on. Like I like that idea, because I was going through a lot of stuff. As you know, I was experiencing a lot of social anxiety and just general anxiety, but it was up around self-worth issues. Yeah, and I think what fast EFT, as you mentioned, what fast EFT really helped me do is really begin to take ownership for what was happening. And even though I think I still was taking ownership in a sense, but it was more of like a blaming myself, like, oh, I'm just, I would have memories of doing something stupid when I was in college or high school or something, and just think, oh my God, I am such a dork, I'm such a dummy. Or I'd have a memory of somebody saying that I wasn't good at doing this, or I wasn't great at that, or whatever it might be, and think, oh yeah, man, that was really, gosh, and I would take these things on and I would make them personal. And so what I found with fast EFT was a way to really kind of begin to notice when I was thinking those things. So rather than identifying with them, rather than saying, oh, that is me, that's who I am, I began to see those experiences as something that I was experiencing. Like a memory was something that I was experiencing. It wasn't a reflection of who I truly was. Game changer, right? Huge game changer. And like you said, now there was something I could do about it. And the tapping was really a way to address those things as they came up. And going off again with what you said about, well, like your example of being angry, right? And just sort of noticing it and not having a freak out about it, just kind of going, oh, I guess I'm sort of angry right now. Those aren't your words, those are mine. But does that kind of echo what your experience was?
Sometimes in life there are still internal freakouts, or we get angry and we express stuff. But I think it's kind of like, but this is what I've realized over the last year. The scariest thing in the world is myself, right? I mean, think about it. We're all locked inside. We have limited human connection. We need that relational connection. And we're forced to sit with ourselves and feel all the stuff we don't want to feel and experience all the thoughts we don't want to think. And, it's kind of like, at least this year really showed me, oh, you're really kind of just going to war with yourself, right? What's inside of you is much, much, much scarier than the world. The world's really just the world. It's kind of like everything around us is objectively pure or good, right? What we dump on that with our own perceptions, whether it's our trauma pattern or it's our self viewpoint of who we think we are, right? We dump all that on it, and that's kind of where the world becomes scary. I think kind of as we go into this journey, right? Each time we go into a trigger and come out of a trigger, we create a gap, right? And the gap, or the consciousness, the ability to be conscious and present, will grow over time. And that will allow us to see, oh, I'm only fighting with myself. Oh, that thought that I'm having is not really the person. It's a thought in my head, right? Like, it's funny how we can sometimes just sit on the couch and go to war with ourselves. You know what I mean? Like we create a picture of something and then we get upset at it and then we argue with that and then we start feeling bad. And it's just this like vicious cycle. And
Yeah.
everybody on the planet does it and we don't realize we're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's powerful what you just said, because I mean, this is something that I point to with my clients all the time is, you know, I mean, even when they come to see me and they'll rattle off, I don't say, I say rattle off, but I mean, you know, they're what they're experiencing is real, albeit what's happening is they're describing all of these things. They're describing a future that hasn't happened. They're describing something that happened to them yesterday, or, you know, when they were 3 years old, or, you know, they have all of this story. And occasionally I'll just have them slow down and ask them, well, is any of that happening to you right here, right now? You know, right this second. And if they slow down enough, they invariably see that, you know, in this moment, none of that is happening. They're sitting down comfortably in a chair, having a conversation, connecting with another human being, right? And in that moment, everything is okay. And to your point, it's the stories, it's the identification with the, I call it trances, right? We have these thoughts about who knows what, everything. Like, you know, it would have really been sort of playing with recently is this idea that thought is actually impersonal. You know, like to the extent that I mean, I don't know that we have, ultimately, I don't know if we have control over what thoughts come into our awareness, right? I think what we have control over is how much we identify with those thoughts. Yeah. You know, it's like if I want to make a phone call and say I want to make a sales call or something, the act of making that sales call is just about picking up the phone and connecting with another human. What makes it difficult for a lot of people, and you can equate this to anything, public speaking, you know, doing something you don't like, whatever, right? What makes it seem difficult and sticky is what you just said, right? Is all of the thoughts that arise. Now, are those being triggered by some experience that we had in the past, and, you know, on and on and on? Yeah, probably. But that's almost irrelevant, I think, now, to me, the way it looks. Like where it comes from seems irrelevant. The leverage point is waking up to what it actually is. Right? Like when you were angry, a part of you woke up to the fact that, oh, I'm just sort of caught up in this, you know, anger thought storm for the moment, but I know I'm just not seeing it clearly, and I know it'll pass, right? That piece there of not attaching ourselves to the thoughts and the feelings. And it's not, I'm not saying like a non-attachment or a, you know, and to be clear, I think, you know, what we're talking about here is really formless. It's about seeing the truth of how our experience is being created, right? And who we are, the ones witnessing that experience. Yeah. I could say, you want to say something?
Yeah. No, I'm getting excited because I'm getting,
Yeah.
none of this is scripted. This is all just kind of off the cuff, but we both have, in some ways, I mean, I know you're doing more with clients than I am. I've got my little group, because it's more my side gig at this point, but we both have different ways of pointing people to this space, right? I mean, there's a lot of different ways. There's meditation, there's tapping, there's body therapies, there's trauma work. I mean, what I realized at a certain point was that the spiritual experiences, that the state where like you're more of a witness and you're not as caught up in every little thought and feeling and emotion comes, at least for me, more tangibly when I do my trauma work, specifically my body work. So for me, it's been a lot of TRE, which is the trauma and tension releasing exercises. Another one is a myofascial program called block therapy. And then there's different meditation practices. But the goal of all of it at the end of the day is feeling better, calming my nervous system, creating that ground, right? Which at the end of the day, what does that mean in life? Well, you can be more objective. You're not as caught up in every little thing. You're not constantly triggered all the time. You're not taking every thought seriously, and you're generally happier. You've got better psychological well-being. Other people may find that when they do the tapping, that they reach that state. I think we get a little bit caught up sometimes in the tool or the way to get there, but it's all, I think, hopefully leaning or pointing towards the same direction. You're a human being. You're going to have emotions that are going to come up. Things are going to trigger you and bother you. Life is going to happen. Sometimes life is good. Sometimes life is not so good. Are you able to not get so caught up in every little thing or every little thought and stay grounded enough to where you're safe and you're okay and you're seeing things as they are? And I think that is like the mature definition of psychological well-being, right? Which is a little different than I always have to be okay. Life always has to go my way, right? Yeah. I always have to have the positive thought because we can get so caught up in like trying to never have a bad thought or bad feeling. And that means that I have made it. And it's like, well, that's a lot of control and a lot of energy to constantly being like, okay, I've got to just think right all the time and feel right all the time. And it's like, no, like you do enough for your work where you're safe enough in yourself to have objectivity, grounded objectivity, where you see everything as it is. You realize your mind is going to go on a tailspin sometimes. You realize that a lot of your problems are just you fighting yourself. You realize reality is just a certain way and it's not, right? But it takes a lot of these moments of like, I have a breakthrough. No, I messed up and I feel horrible. And you got to like go through that enough times where you start to stabilize. And I think that's kind of, I think everyone's still evolving, but that is a more mature definition of psychological well-being. And I'd love to hear what you have to say, because you have another way through the 3 principles and some of the other work of, you can take somebody that's in front of you, and I've come to you and I'm like, Alan, I need help. And you're like, all right, let's slow down. Let's look at what you're experiencing. Let's not get caught up as much in the content of what your mind's throwing at you. Let's kind of step back and like come back into the moment and realize that you're just having a bunch of thoughts and they may or may not even be real, and you don't have to like identify with them. So maybe you can share more on that, because I think that's just, you have a very beautiful way of working with people and getting them to that state.
Yeah, the 3 principles is less of a technique. Actually, it's not a technique at all. But so what it is really an understanding that you and I or anybody else will never truly get 100%. Right. And so I often say, or I've said before, that the 3 principles is one of the most beautiful things I've ever come across. It's also one of the most infuriating things I've ever come across, because it's an attempt to describe how our experience of life works 100% of the time. And it's one of those things where the more all you can do is sort of point to it, but it's always pointing back to you. It's pointing back to your experience. And the more you talk about it, the further away you're actually getting from it, really. The more you try to describe it, the further away you're getting from it. Because it's all about the person seeing for themselves. And what I've found is you only need to see even just a little bit about the nature of your experience for something to occur. And that something will be specific to what you need in that moment. So it's essentially removing the tools altogether. Now, I agree with you. I think that, getting to a place where your mind settles down is always a good idea, because shit, well, I could tell that story at another time, but I've certainly been in a place where my mind was just going haywire, and everything looked, very, very convoluted and overwhelming and confusing. And then I've had moments where I felt like I was just floating through life in a good way, like I was connected and experiencing a lot of love and connection and freedom, And so then it became, well, what is that? What's the difference there? And, in a simple way to look at it, I think the difference is when we've got a lot on our mind, we tend to not do so well. The trick is we don't always recognize when we have a lot on our mind, right? Because thought, which is, when we have a lot on our mind, thought is, it's like putting on a pair of virtual reality goggles, right? So like earlier when you were angry, you could say you were wearing angry virtual VR goggles, right? And so if we don't know we're wearing goggles, we think that's the way the world looks, right? It's like my example earlier. If I have to make that sales call and I have insecurity goggles on, then making that phone call looks like the hardest thing in the world. But if I remember that I'm actually wearing those VR goggles, then I may not be able to see it clearly yet, but I know there's something up. I know I'm just not seeing it as clearly as I could. And so it might mean not making that call right away. It might mean stepping back. It might mean going for a walk. It might mean making a cup of coffee. It might mean tapping on my face. It might mean meditation. It might mean whatever. But whatever comes to me in that moment will be from my wisdom. Whatever comes to you in the moment will be from your wisdom. And if we're talking about the three principles, then that goes beyond just, personal thinking. It really points to the fact that, you and I are an expression of one consciousness, right? One ultimate consciousness. And in that way, we're all connected. And one of the things I love about this understanding is when I am working with somebody, whether it's on Zoom or face-to-face, or whatever, the real transformation happens when I drop away from my personal thinking, my egoic thinking, my personality thinking, and really just speak from what I see about the nature of our experience and connect with that person from that place. And what I have found is what that does is it allows my client's mind to settle. It allows them to sit in a place where they don't feel judged. They stop judging themselves. And that's when we drop away from all of that thinking. So if we don't do so well when we have a lot on our mind, then getting to a place where you fall away from all of that stuff and you fall back into really sort of who you really are, which is witnessing all the thinking. That's it looks to me, that's our optimal state of performance, of just being, right? And the beautiful thing is that even when we do have all this stuff on our mind, who we really are, we don't lose that. That's something we can't disconnect from, because it is who and what we are ultimately. And so even when we do get caught up, that tends to get us through life, right? So even if we're having a shitty time at it, even if we're having lots of ups and downs and we're really struggling and things look really difficult, as long as we're breathing and our heart's beating, that means who we are has got us. It's got us. It's taking us through this life. And it's giving us, even if we brush it aside and don't, honor it, it's still giving us what we need from moment to moment. And so it looks to me like psychological well-being is about bearing witness to that more often, like realizing that that's there for us, and recognizing that anytime it seems like it's not there, just means we have a lot on our mind. It just means we have a lot on our mind. And, as far as it looks to me, there is no end to the depth in which you can see that, because there is no beginning, middle, and end to our experience, right? It's constant, it's flowing. And so every moment is an opportunity to see something, to get a glimpse. Now, do you want to spend your entire existence like reflecting and looking and trying to figure this stuff out? No, I don't think so. I think, it's like you and I talked about back in the tapping days. It's like, no. Tapping is to help you live life. We tap so that we can live. We don't live to tap, right? And it's the same with this. I'll have a deep conversation. I work with people, in hour sessions, 2-hour sessions. I worked with people in over 3 days, in intensives. And regardless, at the end of that session, I tell them, go live your life. Go live your life and just notice. Just notice what occurs to you. Be open to insight. Continue to be open to seeing things differently or deeper, more deeply. Now, again, to your point, the tools, yeah, like, I mean, I know that you do a lot of TRE, and to me, it makes a lot of sense, like to use the nervous system as a gateway, right? Makes a lot of sense to me. And I think when you combine it with an exploration into, what's really going on, I think that's a powerful 1-2 punch. And it means you don't really have to rely on any one technique. It's sort of like, I often say, it's like, if I'm having a bad day and I tap on my face and I distract myself and all of a sudden I'm in a good mood and I'm off doing something else, I'm like, oh wow, I'm having a great day. It must have been on, that tapping I did on my face. Well, that might have had something to do with it. But if we equate our psychological well-being to a tool, it looks to me like it can create a superstition, is one way to look at it. Like when a baseball player has a good game and he decides it's because, he didn't wash his underwear that day or something, and so he wears the same jersey and he keeps wearing it because he keeps winning. But I think what it is having that dirty jersey is taking stuff off of his mind, not physically, but it's just, giving him enough space to not have the same worries that he would normally have about, am I standing in the batter's box right? Is my stance right? Is this right? When we have that kind of thinking, I mean, anybody that plays sports or plays music or does any kind of performance knows that when you've got a lot on your mind, uh, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to perform at your best. And at some point, you have to let go and step out of that. And I think that is the way it works 100% of the time, moment to moment, and in our waking lives. And so simply remembering that and changing our relationship with the experience that we're having from moment to moment and not taking it personal, seeing the impersonal nature of it and the universal nature of it, I think can really do something for us. And excuse me, and to remember that everybody is up against the same thing in life. And so when we see somebody acting in a way that we think is illogical or crazy, whatever label we jump to give it, it can be very helpful to remember that they're looking at the world through their VR goggles in that moment. And ultimately, they're doing what makes sense for them to do based on the way the world looks to them in that moment. Not to say we have to agree with it, but that can give us I don't know. It can give us something. It can give us what we need. It might be a felt connection. It might be compassion. It might be patience. I don't know, but I found it can definitely help, especially in personal relationships. Which have always been, I talk about. I mentioned this to my clients. When I'm working with a client, it's really easy for me to sort of just really connect and zone in and be there and be present and see how they're, what they're up against. But when I'm at home with my, my better half, I forget. I'm getting better, but it's really easy for me to forget because, when you're in a close relationship with that, you almost become one person. And so the triggers, there's not a lot of room, a lot of space there to witness it oftentimes. And so it happens very quickly. But when you do begin to see it and just sort of, everything that I just mentioned, it can create a much, much deeper relationship. And it's not always to say that it means you stay together with the same person forever and ever. It could mean that you go different ways, but you do it from a much more, like you said, a mature place. And when you said mature way to look at it, I would agree with you. And it seems like there's always, when I say there's always something deeper to see, I think there's always another level to go to. And it's not like I'm level 5 and you're level 4. It's just understanding that that's infinite. So there's no way to win the game. You just want to keep exploring,
I mean, I think as we do our work, and we do it a little differently with clients and probably on our own journey. But what I found, at least, like if I teach somebody TRE and they start to tremor and their body vibrates and comes alive, I say, okay, they sit up and I go, what do you notice? And they go, my mind is quiet. You know what I mean? I feel space in my body, right? It's like some people take a body approach, some take more of a cognition approach or awareness approach, but it all leads to the same thing. I do think we need to involve the vehicle a little bit in the process, because if not, it just becomes a head game. But the goal of trauma healing, right, of down regulating the nervous system, is because it leads people to a place of silence and quiet and objectivity and space, which is the truth, right? But that's very hard for somebody that's got a lot of ingrained patterns. Like I used to go to all these non-duality teachers all the time, and they'd say, you are that, you are space. And I'd sit in my college dorm, I'd meditate, and I'd have these beautiful, blissful experiences. And the moment I'd go out into the world, all my anxiety would come back, and all of the patterns would come back, and all the triggers would come back, and I'd lose it like that. It's like, well, how do I take the meditative feeling, which is more of truth, right? You're quiet, you're space, you're present, you're grounded, you're clear, there's objectivity, right? Thoughts may come, you're not really attached to like every little thought. Feelings may come, you're not attached. There's a spaciousness, that grounded awareness, the consciousness in like Ho'oponopono, they call it like the 0 point, right? You're at zero. That's there. How do you bring that into the world? For me, I found it to be a lot of the body work, a lot of the trauma work. Usually that's the stuff that takes people out of zero, or it puts them in such a dysfunctional state of dysregulation that they don't even know what zero is, right? They're either numb or they're in panic or terror. So it's like, how do you bring people back to a grounded space? From that place, when there's a lessening of the trauma symptoms or the anxieties, people start having these amazing, I mean, I've had clients that are like, I feel one, like you were talking about connection. One of my clients one time, we did a session. She went in her backyard. I feel one with nature. Like, how cool is that? Like, that's kind of really how it's supposed to be. We're just caught up on our phones and our, right. And we're all in our pattern. Like, we're just so busy all the time. And I'm, not immune to that. Right. Sometimes these things are addicting, but like at zero, at that place of like, I'm grounded and I'm safe and I'm okay, is where you start to see the nature of reality a little differently. Like, that's when you start to have those awarenesses of, it's just a thought. I'm only facing myself, right? I'm not my thoughts, right? I mean, I remember listening to Byron Katie one time, and she came from like Apple Valley. Like, there's not a lot going on up in Barstow, and she had to sit with herself, I think, in I'm pretty sure it was a group home. And she would just sit with herself in her anguish. And there was like one time a thought came by, and I think she just questioned it. She's like, are you true? And I'll do that from time to time. And they have a thought, and it's like, it's so easy to just grab onto it, and then you just tailspin, or you can question it and you come back to the objectivity. And it doesn't end, right? I mean, we're all going to get triggered. We're all going to have things that happen. But there's two ways you can deal with it, I think, right? You can use the trigger to remember yourself more, right? Which is that space, that silence, that objectivity. Or you can let the trigger, eat you up, and then you kind of get lost, But every time I think we get lost, we can find ourselves again, right? If we use it, if we have that mature emotional kind of depth to us, if we've been on the journey. I don't think it's just as much about positive thinking all the time, controlling your emotions, being non-human, right? That's I think a big misconception. Like, I used to think, well, I'm going to get to a state where I never have any bad thoughts and I never have any bad feelings and I'm the enlightened guy. And it's like, no, that's not true.
Yeah. And in order to do that, I need to think positive affirmations 24/7, and I need to make sure I get the best morning routine, and I got to do this and control every aspect of my experience. And yeah, that's a setup for failure, for a lot of hurt. I've had clients come to see me who are like, why can't I get this law of attraction thing to work? And they're just so stressed out from trying to, think positive. And they don't even see that the anguish they're in and how opposite that is of, trying to be in this positive place. And so, yeah, to your point, I think it's about letting go of that and letting go of trying to control all of it. You know, I think that these tools are great, but you said it just towards the end there. I think the true transformation happens when we really sit with it and take our foot off the gas, so to speak. Yeah. Like, I mean, I was just going through something the other day for like 3 or 4 days, you know, I was just really kind of lost. And at some point it just dawned on me, it just occurred to me, hey, you know, why don't you just stop trying to avoid this, you know, and just really kind of explore it for a minute. And I really did. I just sort of really surrendered and gave in and said, okay, what if I'm just not seeing it right? What if this is just a thought constructed experience? And the result was profound. I mean, and it doesn't always work that way, right? But some of the biggest ahas or I'll say releases that I've had have been from waking up to the fact that I've been running or trying to avoid a feeling or experience. And truly allowing, I think it's I've mentioned him, or you've read his books. Michael Singer talks about allowing those things. The reason those things are coming up, the reason those you know those feelings are coming up is because they want to be processed. They want to move through us. But we've been conditioned to believe it's not okay to feel that stuff, or that feeling that stuff means there's something wrong with us. And so we try to avoid it, or we try to push it down, or we try to hide it away, or we try to numb it out with whatever, right? And ultimately, I think, and this is why I think things like TRE and tapping work, is because they kind of force us to step into that and kind of step into our bodies and really allow our nervous systems to recalibrate. And in so doing, we realize that what we were actually up against really has no substance, if that makes sense, right? Like if I have, if I had a traumatic experience and I have been avoiding myself from dealing with it and feeling it, when it's time for me to turn and face that, if I use tapping to help me out, or if I use TRE to help me out, or anything else, the real power is in letting go of the resistance to it. Yeah. As it looks to me. And here's one more thing I want to say about what you just said. When working with other people, and I know this to be true about you, especially over the years as you've grown, is that, whether you realize it or not, when you work with people, you come to it with a space of knowing that what they're really up against is memory, thought, feeling. And you know that, but for that, they're okay. And what you bring to the table just from being you, right, is a big catalyst to what your clients experience. In essence, you lead by example, right? And I think that's anybody looking for, any sort of help, whether it's a coach or a therapist or a practitioner of any modality. I think that's the juice, man. like looking for somebody who has that grounded sensibility, or, and I'm not saying that, that you and I are above anybody else, because people have it without realizing it, without speaking to it as we're doing now, right? Some people just naturally embody it more deeply. But looking to people who have that sort of, and you can sense it, right? That natural assuredness or confidence, that, and non-judgment, right, of their experience. I think that's really important when it comes to working with other people, because you and I have both experienced, and we've both been that person who, puts all the, puts all the power in the technique, and then says, yeah, come on in here, I'll help you. And just, and there's no regard for this, the consciousness, the spirit, the, or even the, or even the it's not that we don't want to not validate their pain or their experience, because what they're feeling is real, right? So it's, yeah, I don't know. It's just having that, knowing what we know, I think is really the, again, it's the leverage point in any healing. And you can plug that into any tool of your choice. If you have that piece, you're just gonna, you yourself, I think, will be more open to wisdom and what the two of you need in that session, right? Like the more grounded you are, not only do you create a safe space for your client, but it also creates a space for more energy and wisdom and, clarity and ideas. And I mean, I know that you've had experiences working with clients where, as I have, where something comes out of your mouth and you say something and you're like, where did that come from? Or even as you're saying, you're like, why am I talking about this? And the client will go, oh my God, that makes so much sense. I can't believe you said it that way. I was, this, serendipity. Serendipity happens.
Or it comes from your experience. I mean, not that anyone's higher or lower per se, but I do think if you go through it on the path, you can look at somebody else and see where they're at. Because like a lot, it's interesting. And I've been here, God, so many times. You have a pattern and you're like, is it ever going to end? Am I ever going to come out of it? Right. Mm. That's not really, that's the freeze response of a child that was traumatized, or a childhood part of you that had to freeze talking, right? That's not you. But it's like, until you come out of that in yourself to some degree, you can't recognize it in another person. You know what I mean? And with some of our patterns, right? With all of our patterns, really, that are these negative self-talk, behaviors, emotions, triggers, right? There are these aspects of ourselves that are in our nervous system and our body, which is our unconscious, right? They are the VR goggles to this objective state that we talk about, where the more you're there, the more you're able to see it for what it is, right? And you have to come out of it enough times, right, to recognize that you're not it, or at least to recognize when you're in it, there's that gap or that space. And sometimes you have to do enough work to get that gap, to then do deeper self-healing work where you can have compassion towards yourself and the trigger, and you really transform it. I remember I had a client one time, and it was so interesting because I realized that all of their attempts to heal came from self-aggression. Mm-hmm. And every tool they used came from this viewpoint of I've got to blitz it, I've got to nuke it, I've got to get rid of it. I hate it, right? I want to pound it into the ground, right? And it was only until they started to have some compassion, right? Because it's almost like we use our trauma pattern to get out of our trauma pattern, right? It's like if you're shut down your whole life as a little kid, right? And every time these feelings of I want to express myself come up, and you're just shutting them down, right? Thinking that, you know, that's going to help you move through it. Like we're always doing the same thing to ourselves that was done to us. And it takes like that emotional maturity, that psychological well-being, whatever. There's like a certain state where you've got enough consciousness where you can just have more compassion. Like one of my biggest healings was, it was one of my biggest fears. And I remember I was so triggered and my body froze completely. And I was just sitting there and I was like, okay, I'm frozen. And I was aware there was that objectivity, right? But having that didn't necessarily make everything go away, right? But having that with enough consciousness, I was like, okay, so I'm frozen, I'm numb, I'm terrified, right? And I usually would always want to just get rid of it, right? What do I do to get rid of it? And I decided to breathe. And I decided to move towards my body. And I decided to move towards the feeling. And there was no way out. I was forced to experience it with compassion, with love, with kindness, with gentleness. And then it transformed, but it came up for years and it transformed. And then it took a little while because I'd go back into it and come out of it and go back into it and come out of it. But that was like enough of that iceberg kind of like broke off, so to speak, right? So like the objectivity, right? The awareness, the truth plays a part in the healing journey because it allows us to see reality as it is. It allows us to see ourselves as we are. It allows us to see our patterns. Like you can watch yourself going through something. I watch myself sometimes. I'm like, okay, so I'm fighting with something, but it's really me in my head, and I'm feeling it here in my body, and I'm gonna do this behavior, and I just like watch myself, and then it's like, all right, wait, bring consciousness back to this. Like, what can we do that's a healthier way to deal with it? Okay, am I running away, or can I come towards this? Because that's the human, like the human is still there, you know. We don't have to like get rid of it. That's the common thing in spirituality. You either want to leave and never feel anything, because everyone just wants to leave. Like, let me just be in the blissful state, and you leave, right? Or you're so attached to your body, right, that every little thought, feeling, and sensation becomes this big blown out thing, right? So it's kind of like there's the middle ground. I'm grounded enough in my body, yet my consciousness is expanded, and I'm aware of both. Right. And that's kind of where, at least for me, with the people that I work with, that is the formula. And most people get there with enough time and certain things I think have to happen to have these realizations, and this consciousness and energy has to move and all that. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to embracing your humanness, having a high consciousness, not being so stuck airy-fairy like you're not functional and you don't want to be in the world, not being so attached to every little thing where you're like, oh my God, I had a thought and that means that I'm bad and I got to change it. And you know what I mean? But it's like that, having that enough of objectivity to watch yourself and to watch your life and to watch the world. And, you know, I was talking to somebody the other day. We were talking about the world. And they're like, isn't the world a crazy place? And I was like, I mean, all this stuff was kind of happening 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 100 years ago. Now we've got our little phones that tell us a lot quicker what's going on. Maybe we just let the world be the world and just focus on ourselves, right? Like, that's the beauty of COVID. This was the best year of my life. Now, again, I've got a job. Some people are unemployed. Some people have lost loved ones and family members to COVID. So I don't want to downplay that. But I just sat there in March and I said, well, I can use it, or I can just wallow in the fear of everything. And it's like, no. So you meditate, you do your work, you do your whatever. For me, it was do the body work, do the trauma work, spiritually evolve, gain more of that objectivity, see things from truth, right? See things how they really are, more and more and more. And now it's like things are starting to open up, and now it's like you pop your head back into the world. You're like, oh, I'm different, right? Because I'm seeing things from more of a truthful point of view. But that never ends, because sometimes you think you're seeing it from the right perspective, and you realize that that's just a pattern too, right? Or there's subtler levels that we project onto things, and it's just kind of like have more clarity.
Yeah. Yeah. I love everything you just said. And that looks to me like the game, right? The game is we are spiritual beings experiencing our meat suits and our consciousness and our feelings and our nervous system and our brain and what our brains tell us is out there. And so we're sort of, the game is to kind of play between those two things, right? Of course, it's all one ultimately, but our experience of it, seems to sort of fluctuate. And yeah, it looks to me like, kind of bringing it full circle, that would be psychological well-being, right? It's just recognizing that we're on a ride, and that ride, sometimes it's doing this. There's a coach named Michael Neal, and I don't know where he got this from. I think he got it from somewhere, but I'm not sure where. He says this metaphor that I heard years ago. He says, life, it's that life is like a roller coaster, but it's a bit extended. Life is like a roller coaster. You're on this roller coaster, but the roller coaster is built on a barge that's just gently floating down a river, right? And so sometimes you don't realize you're on a barge floating down the river, and that roller coaster is going, all over the place, and you're just having a crazy experience. And sometimes the roller coaster will slow down, and you might even realize, oh, I'm on a barge gently floating down a river. And then there are times when the roller coaster is going crazy, but you still know you're on that barge, gently floating on the river. And so you can be having, a sort of crazy, quote unquote, experience. But if you're on that barge, gently floating on the river, you just don't have to take that experience quite so seriously or so personally. Yeah. And one last thing, to your point about using your own experience as a catalyst to help others, I think that is the absolute truth. I think that my journey there have been parts in my journey of being a helper, a coach, a transformational professional, practitioner, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what I call myself anymore. But there have been moments in my journey where I thought, okay, I've made it. I'm here. I know everything I need to know, and that's all. That's all I need. And invariably, life will smack me across the ass, and say, nope, you need to learn something more. And as crazy as those moments are, moving through that, sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes you see it more quickly, but moving through that is what allows us to serve people on a deeper level.
It's really humbling. What's also humbling is you can do all your work, whatever we want to call the work. I mean, again, there's so many definitions of healing work, but you can do a lot of work, and then you'll have a moment where you just like fall into a trigger, or you just like, you feel really bad, and you just put your arms up, and you're, you know what I mean? Like life will still kick your ass.
Absolutely.
No matter how enlightened or how realized or self-realized you are. I mean, I get, unless you're just in a totally dissociative state, life will still win sometimes. I mean, it was funny. I remember it was a couple of months ago, and I was really upset over something, and I was just kind of in this anxiety state. I was on a walk, and I just sat there, and I was like, all right, what are you trying to teach me? Like what's the lesson?
Mm.
Instead of
Hmm.
being
Hmm.
like, I hate it, and why am I here? And I still do that too sometimes, but it was just like, okay, what do I need to learn? And my body started releasing. I was on this walk, and I can tear the body will tremor, and I had this spontaneous tremor in my arms and my body shaking, and I'm like, and I just had this like energetic physiological release, and it was like, okay, like there's wisdom in this. There's wisdom in the low. The low is as important as the high, and we
Yeah.
don't always see it, right? But it's like you said earlier, you're like, well, life's not always against us, and we have everything we need. That's like a really high level conscious thing. That's really hard for, I'd say, 98%, 99, excuse me, percent of the world to ever get at, just because that takes a lot of inner evolvement to like really realize like you're always given what you need. But at from a spiritual higher consciousness perspective, we are. If we learn that these perceived lows, right? Because sometimes the low is more of like life is happening and we judge it and we add all this like this means this because this happened to me when I was 5 or whatever. We all do that, right? Like we're adding like 20 layers of meaning on it. Or a sensation comes up and it's like, oh my God, this sensation is the sadness. It's kind of like I was joking with a buddy. Um, I was in a lit class in college, and the professor's like, all right, someone read this next line. And it's like, well, Joey's walking down the street and he looks up at the sky and the clouds, the clouds are gray. And he goes, class, what does this mean? And I raised my hand and I go, well, I think it means it's going to rain. And he's like, no, no, someone else. And this girl raises her hand and she's like, well, it reflects the character's inner melancholy because their dad died. And I'm thinking like, what the hell? Like, no one told you that. Like, you're just adding like 20 layers of meaning onto it. But it's true, right? Like a sensation comes up. This means this, and I'm not there yet. And I've done that before, right? Like some of it is learning to trust the moment or feel into these things with non-aggression, right? With that higher consciousness, without adding so much meaning. And there will still be times that suck and there will still be times that are good. And you're learning to use those times and not and kind of realize that everything's here to teach you something or it's going to push you to grow. Um, I do think most people don't really get that because they have not done enough of the trauma work or inner work to get that perspective. But I do think that's true for most people on the planet. Is it's like life is going to present this and it's going to suck, but that whole idea of post-traumatic growth, right? It's like the person that goes through a really bad breakup, but they start to realize how they may have closed themselves off to love initially, and it brings up all these old wounds in them, and they get to work through them, and it sucks in the moment. And then their hearts open and they go find someone that they really connect with and really love, right? From a space of an open heart. In the moment, though, it's like, oh my God, this sucks. And why is this happening, right? But if they are able to come out of that and work through the triggers and have, again, objectivity, the awareness, well, that's seeing it from that higher viewpoint. They get the growth from that, and then they evolve as a human being. And then they evolve with their consciousness, which they evolve spiritually. So it's a goulash, man. It's like you're a human being, you're a spiritual being, you're awareness, you're this body, you're these childhood aspects of yourself. It's like, how does it all fit? I think it does, right? But I do think that the number one thing that is starting to come mainstream is the trauma is the veil. Because if you're triggered all the time, it's very rare very rare to be Eckhart Tolle and have a 180, right? When he's suicidally depressed, I think that was what it is. And he's like, I want to die. And he's like, I can't stand myself. And he's like, who am I? Am I or am I myself? And it was like this huge conscious. But again, for most of us, like, that's rare. I was waiting for that moment when I was doing all the non-duality stuff. It was like, well, all right, close your eyes and let go of your thoughts and you'll morph into it. Hasn't happened yet. I don't know if it will, but the seeing from that viewpoint does happen more and more, because when the crap is cleared out of the way, you realize what's left is you. Right? And there is, right, when old shit is kind of flushed out of you emotionally, physiologically, energetically from your nervous system, energy moves, right? Like the Kundalini will move around. And, you know, I mean, that's why I see these people that do this, like the body work, start to, like, especially some that like they're meditators, right? Like their trauma is so in their body that, like me, their spiritual experiences were reserved for meditation. So they have all this spiritual energy coming down, but then it just butts up against all these traumas in their body and their contraction. And it's like, well, if you open up their spine and they soften their body and you open their pelvis, the energy Kundalini comes down to the pelvis, it hits and it shoots back up to their pineal gland, and they start having these enlightenment experiences. So these people start to like see truth, right? But they see it when they get the trauma out of the way, and then the energy starts to move. So it's like I'm rambling, but there's a lot that we can do to help people, right? It's like, I don't know, you ever notice this? Like you have a memory, like you're doing tapping, for example, right? And these same thoughts come up and you do whatever, your EFT, your fast shift or your energy EFT, doesn't matter, but you're tapping and it's like you have a release and you're just still, right? And it's like all the crap that was there, you have that reconnection to the truth.
Yeah. And in fact, it's not a reconnection. It's just a recognition that you are that space. Maybe not in those words, but it's going home again. It's realizing that you're always home. You know, we're always there. That beautiful space of, you know, I'm going to say no thought. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but that beautiful space of it's just a respite where you recognize. I think the best part about that, if we allow it to happen, is the recognition. Because and what a lot of people do, I think, Jonah, is, you know, they'll experience that space for a moment and then get really insecure because they're not used to it, and so they'll want to go back into, you know, it's like I'll have a client and we'll get to this beautiful loving space, and we'll settle down, and we might even sit in that silence for a moment, and, you know, just see the look on their face, and then all of a sudden they'll go like this, and I know they're moving out of it, and they'll start to go, and I can almost guarantee you the next words out of their mouth will be, yeah, but what about, and so oftentimes what I'll do is just go, okay, hold on a second, we can address that in a moment, but what do you make of the fact that you were just in this really, really wonderful space? And I'm guessing you were there for a moment and then you kind of lost it. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. What do you make of that? What do you like? Why do you think that happened? You know, and just bringing that awareness to, you know, the thought feeling connection for people. It's not demonizing personal thinking or demonizing thought. You know, thought is an amazing tool. You know, it's this amazing. Sid Banks said it's like thought is the paintbrush of our reality. You know, it's wonderful to plan a vacation, you know, or to have dreams, you know, of whatever, pleasurable stuff, or to plan what we're going to have for dinner, that's using thought in a creative way. Unfortunately, sometimes we use it in a creative way that makes us, fills us with anxiety and overwhelm and sadness and anger and everything else. And so it's in that realization, in those moments. And I believe that we can wake up to that in any moment. We can wake up to that in any moment. And so we may not see it 100% of the time. Like you said, like, I think that is very rare for someone to go. Even Sid Banks, who had this enlightenment experience, he literally, over like course of 3 or 4 days, shit just started falling away, and he saw more and more the nature of his thinking, and until he got to the point where he's like, I've seen God, like, I need to go share this. And even he would have moments of anger, and moments of whatever, but he wouldn't pay them so much mind, and so I think it's being open to having those glimpses again, no matter how you get there. I think being open to having those glimpses of realization into the nature of our experience, again, is the game, as we mentioned. Man, we've been talking for over an hour, brother.
I
feel
know.
like we could talk. It's almost an hour and a half. I feel like we could do this for another 6 hours.
This was great. No, thank you for setting it up, man. We'll do it again for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I may even break this one into 2 parts. We'll see.
Yeah.
And we should definitely do it again. Thanks, man.
That was good.
Yeah. Let me.
I don't know what we were talking about half the time. I just kind of like, all right, let it flow.